Her sister, Darlene Theron, was killed by the Zodiac in 1969. She remembers Darlene being terrified of a new stranger in town.
She said that she'd seen him do something. She'd seen him kill someone. She told me to stay away from him. He's a bad man.
A week later, Darlene was dead. The stranger disappeared, but Pam never forgot the man her sister warned her about. The man she's convinced is the murderer.
I want the man that killed my sister brought to justice.
We can't show you his face or tell you his name because he's not officially a suspect. But Detective Hines says these and other witnesses have convinced him he's finally solved the Zodiac mystery.
I think Harvey's guy is the strongest suspect they've ever had.
Ryder McDowell's a reporter who's investigated Harvey's theory. His findings appear in next Sunday's This World section of the San Francisco Chronicle, the very newspaper the Zodiac once sent clues to.
A number of times he sent letters to the press saying, this is my identity. Solve this riddle, this cryptogram. You'll find out who I am.
And the name that appeared in that cryptogram? It's the same name Harvey's suspect goes by today, the man captured on this videotape. And Detective Hines is working to get somebody, anybody, to listen to his theory.
My number one goal, it's always been that goal, is to get my suspect off the street, charged with a crime, prosecuted, and sent to prison.
It's been almost 20 years since the Zodiac was last heard from, but his victims refused to give up hope.
Let's end this 25 years of a serial killer that can't be caught. That's what I want. Our family be able to bury my sister in the fashion that she should be buried, with dignity.
The Zodiac case has never been closed, and as police follow new leads, one thing for the killer to remember: there's no statute of limitations on murder.
Died with him. But there's a cop in Central California who says he can prove otherwise. Doug Kriegel has details in part 2 of our exclusive report, California Killers Still at Large.
Springtime in the California wine country is the most glorious part of the year. But local police are still regularly reminded of Zodiac, the uncaptured killer who claims to have murdered more than 30 people. Here in the Napa Valley, police are still getting calls about Zodiac.
People have this mystique about this killer who has baffled the police and baffled the media, and that nobody can solve his cryptic code.
The secret code created by the Zodiac killer was mailed to California newspapers and police. Now this homicide investigator in Central California claims he has broken the code.
He put in 3 circled H, used 3 A's. And perhaps that could be his date of birth. 3H or 24. Perhaps he was born in 1924.
Detective Harvey Hines of Escalon says his analysis of these cryptic symbols reveals the Zodiac's name is Cain.
We also have another clue. He installed another clue in the cryptogram. It reads name Cain or name Cain, C-A-N-E, reading from right to left. And perhaps that would be his ethnic background. Hebrew reads from right to left, perhaps he's Jewish. So if we take the Zodiac for his word here, his name is Cain, K-A-N-E, his name is Cain, C-A-N-E, born in 1924 under the sign of Taurus with a Jewish background.
Indeed, there is a man who used the name Cain, who has a criminal record, who was born in 1924. He's an ex-mental patient who fits the profile of the Zodiac killer. The man called Cain now lives in rural Northern California, but he hasn't been arrested.
No one would take it serious, I believe, because I was an outsider. I had no vested interest in it. And what could a small-town cop accomplish that they couldn't accomplish?
In fact, big city police rejected evidence from small-town cops like Harvey Hines, and police rivalries hampered the Zodiac investigation of possibly 30 murders all over the state. There have been about 1,500 active suspects in the Zodiac murders. Some police officers, including the man called Dirty Harry, became so obsessed with Zodiac, it nearly destroyed them. Super cop Dave Toschi, a San Francisco homicide detective and the model for the Dirty Harry movies, vowed to catch the Zodiac, but he never did. Toschi's career soured. He's now a security guard at this San Francisco hospital. Families of the Zodiac victims became close to police. and many officers just burned out because of frustration.
This case is probably the only thing that would get me out of retirement and go back into law enforcement work.
This is a composite sketch of the Zodiac killer 20 years ago. Today, he might look something like this, and he's probably still at large. Doug Kriegel, Channel 4 News, Los Angeles.
Known only as the Zodiac. Tony Valdez looks back at the murder spree that claimed as many as 37 victims and to this day remains unsolved.
It was a bloody world we lived in the late 1960s. There was the war in Vietnam, the anti-war struggle here at home, and in Los Angeles, Charlie Manson's renegade family had hacked its way into immortality by stabbing to death pregnant actress Sharon Tate and 6 others. But even that kind of carnage couldn't compare for sheer terror with the 37 murders claimed by the San Francisco Bay Area serial killer who ominously called himself Zodiac. Zodiac's first murders were in the Vallejo area east of San Francisco.
He was casting his horoscope to choose the times he would kill people. And what he was doing was targeting young people, usually by a body of water, usually on a Saturday night, a couple, sometimes out on their first date, as heat stalks for some period.
One of the 2 people who survived the Zodiac attack helped Graysmith sketch the now infamous drawing of the killer.
He could kill with knives, he could kill with guns. He did just about whatever he wanted, and he had literally a godlike power. He had the power of life and death. You live because I'm not going to kill you, you die.
The killer's letters and postcards to newspapers and police almost always opened with a curious choice of words. This is the Zodiac speaking. The letters usually contained ciphers, mysterious symbols forming a code that the Zodiac claimed would reveal his identity as well as his reason for killing.
And the Salinas economics professor broke that, and the motivation was that he wanted to hunt people because man was the most dangerous game.
No one ever deciphered a name that made sense. The Zodiac even scrawled messages to some of the murder scenes. This one, on the door of a car his victims drove, notes the place, the dates of other murders, and the weapon used. Then suddenly, there were news reports about a Southern California connection. The unsolved murder of Riverside co-ed Sherry Jo Bates. She died 2 years before the Bay Area killings. Notes the killer said to her father and to police were signed Z. And someone carved a poem into a wooden desk in the library where Sherry Jo was last seen. It reads like a preview of messages the Zodiac would write years later. In fact, in a 1971 letter, Zodiac wrote, "I do have to give them credit for stumbling across my Riverside activity. They are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there." The murder of cab driver Paul Stein in downtown San Francisco on October 11, 1969, was the most blood-curdling Zodiac killing of all.
He had shot the driver in full view of a party being held by some teenagers, gets out of the cab, wipes it down with the cab driver's shirt, of which he tore off pieces and sent through the mail over the years, and they get to stroll around the corner. And at this point, 2 policemen arrive, and Zodiac stepped back into the shadows, holding a gun behind his back. They didn't know this was the guy they were looking for, and he sent them off in another direction. And he ambles off into the park where he watches the search for him later.
By then, practically everyone in the Bay Area was under the Zodiac spell.
It took a great deal of fear in the hearts of the citizens and a lot of anxiety for police officers. Here was this person committing murders almost at will, at random. We see that the police were powerless to do anything about it.
The murders seemed to stop in early 1970 with the official death toll at 9, although Zodiac claimed body counts that looked more like football scores. In this letter, it was San Francisco PD 0, Zodiac 17+. He eventually claimed to have killed 37 people. There were at least 3 different sketches done of the suspect. One of them seems to resemble convicted Unabomber killer Ted Kaczynski.
They both were here in San Francisco at the same time. Both Zodiac and the Unabomber sent letters to the press and bomb diagrams as Zodiac did. He threatened to blow up exclusives.
The plans for that attack were contained in a Zodiac letter, but he wrote later that the bomb was a dud. Police do not believe Ted Kaczynski is also Zodiac. There are, however, at least 5 suspects who've been seriously considered over the years. Today at a website called the Zodiac homepage, there is a photograph of Arthur Lee Allen, the suspect most investigators believe to be Zodiac.
Well, Alan was a scary guy. This is a guy with two master's degrees, very physically powerful, potentially an Olympic diver at one time. He wore a wristwatch that had a cross circle on it that said Zodiac. He wore a Zodiac ring.
What's more, the Zodiac letters stopped when Alan went to prison on a child molestation conviction. Some years ago, Alan talked about the Zodiac case while at the same time trying to protect his identity.
The only way I could clear myself would be for the real Zodiac to confess that he's still alive.
Alan kept claiming his innocence right up to his death in 1992.
I am not the Zodiac. I've never killed anyone. These guys almost, well, they had me questioning myself.
Those investigators were apparently about to file murder charges when Alan died in Vallejo of a heart attack.
And he was found dead in front of his computer with a lump on his head and a bathrobe. The clippings of the case and a disc in the machine that said Zodiac on it. So he said in the Chronicle, actually I believe one of the policemen said that if Arthur Lee Allen were alive today, they would arrest him as the Zodiac.
But what if all those investigators are wrong? What if Zodiac is still hunting, but now disguising not only himself, but also any connection between his murders? Robert Graysmith is the author of Zodiac, the definitive book on the case. He spent years shadowing Arthur Lee Allen and paid a price for it.
I'll tell you the most frightening times were Saturday nights. For years, I got hang-up calls every Saturday night. All I hear is sort of like the sound of wind resting on the phone. That went on for a long, long time until I finally changed my number.
To this day, Graysmith believes that the caller, whoever it was saying, in effect, this is the Zodiac speaking. In Los Angeles, Tony Valdez, Fox 11 News.
It would sound like a cliché Hollywood script if it weren't true. A serial killer stalking victims, taunting police, even keeping bloody mementos from his slayings, and boasting about his deeds to the news media. A killer always one step ahead of frazzled investigators, and leaving behind cryptic messages that top code breakers had trouble solving. On top of that, a bizarre costume. He was the Zodiac, and he's never been caught.
He took credit for all of his murders and left clues at the scene that only he could have done. After his supposed sixth murder, or fifth, depending if you count an earlier murder in Riverside, he stopped leaving clues and told the police that he wasn't going to take credit anymore. In subsequent letters, he did say that he killed 12, and then in his last letter, he said Zodiac 37, police 0.
I want your wallet and your car keys.
The TV show America's Most Wanted has been recreating scenes of the Zodiac case to find out if, after 3 decades, there's a chance of catching him.
This may be a tougher case than most. It's old. There's no guarantee that he's still alive. We don't have a name. 4 law enforcement agencies who are very good have tried and haven't been able to catch him. So we're not deluding ourselves that we may be the one. But you never know. We've had much harder cases that we've solved.
It's very frustrating. A case is really never closed until you solve the case. So while this case may be 29 years old, it's still an open case. Every time we get a lead or any information that comes in, we'll follow it up. So it's, you know, you'd like to be able to close the case.
Now, San Francisco and Vallejo police are assigning new investigators to the Zodiac.
We have met with the other agencies who have what we believe are confirmed Zodiac cases, and we're going to review the cases, the evidence that exists, take a look at it and see if there's any new technologies out there that we might be able to utilize in the case.
He was with another guy out at a local park and was shot. But exactly why they were there or what was going on, it's all speculation.
Dean Theron's wife, Darlene, was the second victim claimed by the Zodiac. The Vallejo waitress was found shot to death in a parked car on the 4th of July, 1969. 30 years later, the memory is still painful.
Well, every year or so, somebody will call and want to do an interview or just talk about it, get some ideas. As far as I know, nothing's ever come of it.
I know what you're thinking, punk.
The Zodiac inspired the classic Clint Eastwood movie Dirty Harry. The scene where the Zodiac takes over a school bus was no fiction. The Zodiac had threatened to blow up a Bay Area school bus, and children throughout the area were given emergency instructions on what to do in case it happened. Today, Hollywood's fascination continues. Touchstone Pictures is launching a new movie about the Zodiac. And now web pages can be found on the internet with lists of the victims and theories on who the killer might be. Even the Unabomber has been considered a suspect.
I think he's probably dead. I don't think somebody like that can just go from doing what he was doing to just disappearing. So I think he's probably dead, but, you know, if he's out there, I'm kind of worried.
It is a long shot to expect that the Zodiac might be caught. After all, we don't even know if he's still alive. But renewed police interest and national exposure from this TV show might make the difference. America's Most Wanted airs Saturday night at 9 here on Channel 2. In Oakland, Ken Wayne for Mornings on 2.
Began terrorizing the West Coast decades ago. We'll talk with the creator of a website that's dedicated to keeping you aware of the crime. He baffled police for a generation. Now America's Most Wanted is on trial. Up next, we'll meet the man who put the famous criminal on the internet. Years ago, a killer calling himself Zodiac began a reign of terror in Northern California. The case has yet to be solved. In fact, you may have just seen America's Most Wanted update on the mystery right here on Fox. The segment centered on a young man who's put the case for the world to see on the web. Tom Voigt had police reports that America's Most Wanted hadn't been able to find. That's when he became a consultant for the show. Voigt says his fascination with the case keeps his interest alive.
Well, it's a really enticing mystery, and the more I learn about it, the more interesting it gets. And it's unsolved, and it's still there's still developments to this day.
Tom says his nephew Alex helped him set up the original page, and then he took it from there. Here is the address on the web. If you want it, it is www.zodiackiller.net.
He killed for sport and bragged about it to police.
I once reported double murder. I also killed those two kitties last year. Goodbye.
It was very eerie. It's scary when a man kills and brags about it.
Is he still out there? Tonight, new clues to solve the case of the man who dressed to kill.
This is the Zodiac speaking. I like killing people because it is so much fun.
This guy is a pathological, psycho killer.
It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill. The most thrilling experience.
Those were the words of a madman who held this city hostage 30 years ago. He sent his letters to local papers who chronicled his horrible acts. It all began December 20th, 1968. Two teenagers were brutally shot at a lover's lane in Vallejo, California. For the Zodiac, it was just the beginning. 6 months later, Terry's restaurant in Vallejo. 23-year-old Darlene Farron was working as a waitress. To everyone, Darlene appeared outgoing. But according to Darlene's sister, she was hiding a dark secret. A man had been following her, a man who could have been the Zodiac.
He was a man that she was afraid of the last 2 years of her life, and I've seen him on 8 different occasions. She's seen him do something. She's seen him kill someone. She told me to stay away from him. He was a bad man. And that's all she would tell me.
That holiday afternoon, Darlene made plans with her friend Mike Majot. Just after midnight, Darlene and Mike pulled into the parking lot at the Blue Rock Springs golf course. They'd been there just a few minutes when another car pulled in behind them.
Maybe it's the cop. You should get out your driver's license.
There's two young kids that are just, literally shot to pieces. In my mind, that's the most violent crime scene that I've ever come across.
12:40 a.m., July 5th, the Zodiac made this call to the Vallejo PD.
I once reported double murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you'll find a brown car with 2 kids in it. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those 2 kitties last year. Goodbye.
It was kind of a taunting phone call, and we very definitely believe that it was the killer, the Zodiac killer, that made that phone call.
Mike survived the attack, but tragically, Darlene Farron died that day. The Zodiac then mailed this bizarre code to the newspapers, challenging the police to solve it. They failed. So did the FBI and the CIA. It appeared hopeless until a high school history teacher figured it out.
Look for a similar repeated pattern. And the major thing was that we felt that the word kill or killing would appear in his code, and the word I, because he had an ego.
He was right. The Zodiac's chilling message, "I like killing people," made police realize they were dealing with a dangerous man, a man who considered murder a sport. And while the Zodiac's identity remained a mystery, his killing was about to become even more bizarre. In Lake Berryessa, northeast of Napa, Cecilia Ann Shepard and Brian Hartnell had spent the afternoon together.
I'm sorry, Brian, what were you saying?
I want to know when you are coming up.
Brian?
I want your wallet and your car keys.
He had a hood over his face, and he was a big guy, 6 foot or better, over 200 pounds.
I'm going to tie you up, so lay face down on the ground. Face down. Tie the boy up. Tie him up.
The guy told all I want to do is kill you people. I have to kill you. The boy asked him, said, "You really mean that?" He said, "Yes, I mean it."
That's it. That's it. Come on. Come on. I'm not going to shoot you. I am going to stab you both.
Well, he said, "You're going to kill me first, but I can't stand to see the girl be stabbed." I said, "Well, I'll do that." So he started stabbing the kid in the back. He told me 10, 12 times, but he had so much blood on him I couldn't tell. I knew he was stabbed several times. And then he stabbed the girl. I've been patrolling this lake now 11 years, and I've seen a lot of people that have been cut up in boats and this and that, and for no reason at all. That's about the worst I ever seen. The kids just chopped up, real nice college kids, just stabbed for no reason at all. I never witnessed anything like it before.
Then, in a sick statement, the Zodiac took credit for this attack as well as 2 others. And here's the real car door, still in evidence at the Napa County Sheriff's Department.
It was very eerie. I'd never worked a case like this where a man would just blatantly come out and take credit for crimes, and that was probably the most important piece of evidence we had at that particular moment.
Brian Hartnell survived the attack, but tragically, Cecilia Shepard died the following day. And once again, the Zodiac bragged about the murder, calling it in to the police. This time, he left behind a partial palm print. He also left behind a boot print. Police ID'd it as a boot used by Air Force and Navy personnel, mostly on aircraft carriers. The bad news was 600,000 pairs were issued.
It was one of those things that gave us a focus on an area, but wouldn't lead us to any particular one individual.
One vicious murder after the other, all in remote areas, all involving couples, all near water. A pattern was emerging, but that would soon change. The Zodiac was about to change his M.O. and commit his most brazen murder yet, right in the heart of San Francisco. It was here on Geary Street in the Cedar District that the Zodiac killer would find his next victim. That case brought police this close to catching him. We'll show you how he got away and give you the clues that could help catch him when we come back.
Still to come, the Zodiac hatches a terrifying plan.
I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out.
Can police stop him in time? Plus, we'll show you the suspects and give you the clues to close the case.
Cabby Fallstein stopped around 9:30 to pick up another fare on this busy Saturday night. He had no idea the man getting in his cab was the Zodiac. The Zodiac had the cabbie take him here to Washington and Cherry Street in the fashionable neighborhood of Presidio Heights. Did the Zodiac live nearby? Whatever the reason, this was the result. Stein was killed instantly, the bullet shattering his skull. But the Zodiac didn't know several teenagers had just witnessed the murder. They called the cops and gave a description. Within moments, police literally looked into the eyes of the Zodiac.
Not him.
But just as quickly, they drove off. What happened? Unbelievably, there was a mix-up in the description. Police were told to look for a black man. They'd never again get this close to the Zodiac, and he taunted them in this letter.
This is the Zodiac speaking. I am the murderer of the taxi driver over by Washington Street and Maple Street last night. To prove this, here is a blood-stained piece of his shirt. The San Francisco police could have caught me last night. Hey, pig, doesn't it rile you to have your nose rubbed in your boo-boos?
And now police were able to give the Zodiac a face. This is the composite police have used since 1969. And this is what the Zodiac thought of it.
I look like the description passed out early when I do my thing. The rest of the time, I look entirely different.
As the San Francisco police questioned hundreds of suspects and followed up thousands of leads, the Zodiac refused to stay silent. He sent over 20 letters, cryptograms, and greeting cards to the press, daring the police to find him before he struck again. But it was this letter on October 13th, 1969, that really struck fear in the hearts of everyone.
School children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kitties as they come bouncing out.
That'll get your attention in a hurry, especially a man that's known to be a killer. You don't want to take things like that too lightly. So we had extra security assigned to school buses, especially the ones that went out in the rural areas.
Fortunately, maybe because he was scared off by the cops, the Zodiac never went through with his threat. The police had won this battle, but the Zodiac was about to change the rules.
I shall no longer announce to anyone when I commit my murders. They shall look like routine robberies, killings of anger, and a few fake accidents.
The Zodiac kept the city on edge with a running tally of his murders, eventually claiming 37 victims, including what now appeared as first, the 1966 murder of UC Riverside co-ed Sherry Jo Bates. Here's the note the Zodiac wrote at the time of her death, prophetically announcing there will be more. And as the Zodiac's notoriety grew, the public's fascination increased. The local 1971 movie, The Zodiac Killer, promised a motorcycle to anyone guessing the Zodiac's real identity. While the classic Dirty Harry based the psycho killer Scorpio directly on the Zodiac, ending with a shootout on a crowded school bus. And while Hollywood gave this story an ending, the real Zodiac was far from finished. He'd strike again on a desolate road near Modesto, California.
So I now have a little list, starting with the woman and her baby that I gave a rather interesting ride for a couple of hours one evening.
It was late at night. I had left in the evening, and the car behind me started flashing its lights, bright and dim. And the car pulled up behind me, and this guy got out, and he said that my back wheel was wobbly.
Back wheel? Looks like it's not on good. Oh. I could tighten the lug nut. Oh, no. No.
He did look square. I mean, only because he had long hair, and he didn't. He looked military looking.
All done. Okay. Thanks a lot.
I was just moving slow, and it just dropped down, and the tire fell off.
Guess it was what I thought.
He went back and looked at it, and said he guessed lug nuts were stripped or something like that, and she'd give me a ride to a gas station to get it fixed.
You know you're gonna die. You know you're gonna die. You know you're gonna die. I'm sick.
He appeared to be almost trance-like.
That's good. And the baby's going up the window.
I believed him when he said I was gonna die, he was gonna kill me. Don't panic, don't scream, don't yell. Just wait and see what happens. You know, he could have stopped at any time, and physically been stronger than I was. I was like 7 months pregnant, and I had a little kid on my lap. When we would come to any kind of stop sign, he would slow down, but he didn't stop. So I jumped finally. Saw a man in the field.
Hey, come back here!
Fortunately for Kathleen, the trucker stopped when he saw the Zodiac's car, and the Zodiac fled. Kathleen, her little girl, and her unborn child had just cheated death. Kathleen was brought to the Patterson Police Department and made this statement.
And he stopped early, and he about 170 pounds, maybe. That's him. That's the man who tried to kill me.
I looked up on the wall, and there was one of those composite drawings of the person I just spent his time with. Turns out it was the Zodiac, and I didn't know who that was at the time. It meant nothing to me.
But it obviously meant something to the Zodiac. He returned to Kathleen's car, then set it on fire. Law enforcement officers and investigators assert there are as many possible suspects as there are signs of the Zodiac. One expert on the case, retired police officer Harvey Hines, came up with a possible suspect, Larry Kane, a peeping Tom who had ties to the Bay Area.
I've spent thousands of hours on this. I've traveled thousands of miles. I went to every agency that had a vested interest in it.
You've collected enough circumstantial evidence, and it becomes real evidence. In this file alone, I have 75 points of interest that compare the Zodiac with the suspect Kane.
There's just a monumental amount of informational, circumstantial type information that Harvey's developed over the years that point directly to this person.
But Hines still wanted validation. He included Kane's photo in a lineup and showed it to Kathleen. Guess who she picked out? Larry Kane.
This man.
Kane is still alive, but it's important to note he's been questioned by police, and they don't believe at this time he's the Zodiac. Another person who Zodiac theorists suspect, but has never been charged, is Bruce Davis, a Manson family member. Davis is in prison on unrelated murder charges. In the Zodiac-Manson connection, Howard Davis and others assert that the man at Terry's restaurant was ID'd by Darlene Farron's sister Chris as Bruce Davis. Many believe the Zodiac was Vallejo resident and convicted pedophile Arthur Lee Allen, who asserted his innocence up to his death in 1992.
I'm not the Zodiac. I've never killed anyone. These guys almost, they had me questioning myself.
Today, websites such as ZodiacKiller.net receive hundreds of hits each week, while shows such as Millennium continue to draw on the Zodiac for their storylines.
His eighth victim was a cab driver. Avatar shot him on a crowded street. Still covered with blood, he was seen heading into a public park.
While people disagree who the Zodiac is, here are several major clues everyone agrees on. He was stocky with short-cropped hair and wore glasses. He has a calm voice. He's intelligent. He knows codes and probably has a military background. He's an expert marksman. He's an old movie buff and likes Gilbert and Sullivan musicals. He's probably in his late 60s now. And one last note, what about the Zodiac's name? Do his identity and actions really revolve around astrology? Or as some believe, is he merely a film buff, paying homage to the 1939 movie Charlie Chan at Treasure Island?
But Dr. Zodiac, not ordinary criminal. He is man of great ego, with disease known to science as pseudologia fantastica. Criminal egotists find pleasure in laughing at police.
The Zodiac is one of the most notorious killers of this century, and we could catch him tonight. You know, I always say somebody out there knows something, may have heard something. I want you to think hard about the clues you heard tonight. And you can go over those clues and a lot more in this month's issue of America's Most Wanted magazine, or visit our website at amw.com. Stick around. We'll be right back. The San Francisco Police Department for all their help. It's been a pleasure working with you. I'm John Walsh. Thanks a lot for watching. And remember, you can make a difference.
He would follow her.
I was obsessed with raping women. The obsession, the fantasy stays there. You can't take it from him.
These are people who can change from tears to ice like that.
You look good.
always saw me wherever I went. It was like a nightmare.
It's about having control. It's about making someone do what you want.
I knew that I was going to do something against her.
It was never as good as the fantasies.
Think of it as fishing for victims. He's just out there baiting, chumming the waters, waiting for someone to take the bait and come forward.
They don't stand out in a crowd. In fact, they blend right in.
Good evening. I'm John Wall. Tonight we'll take you inside the world of criminal fantasy, where violent desires manifest into obsession, the place where nightmares are created. We'll unmask 4 faces of evil to see what motivates the most violent offenders. It could save your life. We start with the stalker, a predator on the hunt. And as Ed Miller reports, for those who are trapped inside a stalker's fantasy, life is a living hell.
Of the serial offenders who I interviewed, generally it was kind of the same theme, to be in a power where they can manipulate, dominate, control.
I killed 87 people in a period of 17 years.
You got bad intentions, you got bad intentions.
I was like, oh my God, I did it again. Is there no end?
Criminal profiler John Douglas has spent his life studying the serial killer. He's talked with dozens of them. He's helped police catch them. He's written books identifying the obsessions that haunt them. According to Douglas, the overriding motivation for these sadistic killers is pleasure. They enjoy killing.
They want to see the tears streaming down that victim's face. They want to make that victim beg. And if he's a killer, he wants to be the executioner.
We've enlisted Douglas to use his skills and knowledge to profile one of the most infamous and elusive serial killers we've ever profiled, the Zodiac Killer, a faceless menace who killed at least 5 people in 1 year. The Zodiac struck in the late 60s in San Francisco, at first targeting teens out on a date at Lover's Lane.
Everything that they represent there, this relationship, this bonding between a young male and a young female, this person has never had.
But according to Douglas, those first killings didn't satisfy the Zodiac's lust for blood. As with many serial killers, the reality of the kill didn't live up to the fantasy, so he morphed into a more sinister character, wearing a costume, tying up his victims, using a knife.
I'm not going to shoot you. I'm going to stab you both.
This was a better thrill for him. He would enjoy that a lot better than the more impersonal way of just going up to people and blitzing them.
For no reason at all. That's about the worst I ever seen. The kids just chopped up real nice college kids. Just stabbed for no reason at all. I never witnessed anything like it before.
The murders terrified San Francisco, making headlines daily, which only fed the Zodiac's obsession. To ensure his infamous status, he began taunting the police and the press.
I want to report a double murder.
He took credit for his crimes, enjoying the limelight. Cryptograms he sent contained coded messages, exposing his psychotic fantasies. When decoded, the messages began. I like killing people because it's so much fun.
What it tells you about the person, too, is he's very obsessive compulsive. It would take hours and hours and maybe days to put this all together. But what he's doing here, he's telling us how bright he is. He's telling us, he's a lot smarter than the rest of the world.
Letter after letter arrived to police, with the Zodiac claiming to have killed again and again, until finally the most terrifying letter of all, threatening the assassination of school children, sending the public into a panic. But Douglas believes he never intended to kill those kids.
These children represent even himself. Helpless, hopeless, innocent children. He could have had a life like that. But he knew that by making this threat, that would be a way for him, again, to manipulate law enforcement.
The Zodiac's fifth cold-blooded murder was against a cab driver. After the press had tried to pigeonhole him as a lady killer, the Zodiac set out to prove them wrong.
So I think his message then was, when he took the life of that cab driver, was, hey, you got your psychology boys all messed up here. I can kill men, so he zaps him. He hits him with a bullet in the back of his head.
After that, some more communications with the police. Then, nothing. They never discovered who the Zodiac really was. But our expert has some insight.
If you would one day find him and find his room and go through his belongings, he would have every newspaper clipping, every story that's ever been written about him. He would have his own personal diaries where he's communicating to himself.
The Zodiac struck in the late 60s, but it seems his influence carried on for decades. Other notorious serial killers seem to have mimicked the Zodiac. In New York, one serial killer even called himself the Zodiac. Heriberto Seda shot 4 people in 4 months. Ted Kaczynski, the infamous Unabomber, wrote rambling letters to the press and law enforcement, much like the Zodiac did. And his intricate bomb designs show a similar personality.
If you take a look at Ted Kaczynski, the so-called Unabomber, it's the same kind of thing, making these devices. He has this obsessive-compulsive personality, and he better have an obsessive-compulsive personality to make the kind of bombs he made, because these things could blow up in his face.
The serial killer who most resembles the Zodiac is David Berkowitz, New York's Son of Sam, whose choice of victims paralleled the Zodiac. He wrote bizarre letters to newspaper columnist Jimmy Breslin.
In a game, no question about it. I think he gets a kick out of it.
But unlike the Zodiac, he got caught. And so now he's sitting in jail and sits there and he fantasizes and he obsesses today, and you interview him, he can remember every specific detail of the crime. It's just like replaying a favorite CD over and over in his brain, and there's no remorse, whatsoever.
Berkowitz claims now to have found God, even going so far as to star in a video for other criminals, entitled Son of Sam, Son of Hope.
Being the son of Sam was the biggest waste. It was the biggest lie.
He claims to have been possessed by evil when he committed those horrific crimes, and that he has overcome that evil. But according to Douglas, no serial killer can overcome their obsession. Even Berkowitz, even the Zodiac, if he's still out there.
The obsession, the fantasy stays there. You can't take it from them, no matter what you do. You can torture them, but you can't take that fantasy or that obsession away.
If Sam got caught, probably still be doing it.
What I did, I snapped and I just went off. And then I just kept going off.
If you were to be released at noon tomorrow, what would you do?
Take a nice bath, eat a nice dinner, and I would probably commit a murder before nightfall.
So if the Zodiac is still alive, how did he stop his killing spree? How did he keep from giving in to the obsession?
I've seen cases where that they just suddenly stopped, and they just then would just go back into the fantasy and just kind of sit back in that lazy boy chair and pull out your scrapbook and think of your memories and of what you did, and that's enough to get them through it.
Anyone could develop an obsession, even you. See why when we return.
Green River has another distinction. It was the grisly dumping ground for one of America's most notorious serial killers. It's been almost 20 years since the bodies began turning up, but the Green River Killer is still at large. Our program looks at that case and other serial murders that have not been solved. The killers may be dead, they may be waiting to strike again. Join us now as the History Channel presents History's Crimes and Trials, Unsolved Cases, The Zodiac Killers.
Serial killers can strike in America's largest cities and sometimes escape uncaught. Even though their victims may be murdered within a small area and over a relatively short space of time, it can be difficult for the police to link the killings and then identify one person within a large and shifting population. In one of the most notorious cases, the Boston Stranglers' 13 murders, which took place over an 18-month period starting in 1962, the police only solved the case when the murderer, Albert DeSalvo, confessed while in prison for other offenses. The Son of Sam killings, which terrorized New York during 1976 and 77, saw the police receive letters from the killer which made clear his intention to keep striking with increasing frequency. The killings were only ended when a parking violation ticket was traced to David Berkowitz, and he willingly confessed. Other cases remain unsolved. Here are 4, in which the attacks continued after the police investigation had got underway. Each ended with horrific body counts, but no killer identified. In 1990, New York seemed to be facing another son of Sam, a gunman who attacked random passers-by, causing a wave of terror to sweep over the city, the park. The victim, 30-year-old Larry Parham, survived and was able to attract passers-by. He signed off with a symbol which had become familiar with an unsolved series of killings in San Francisco some 20 years earlier, by a killer who also called himself Zodiac. But as Chief of Detectives Joseph Borelli pointed out, it also had a more immediately sinister connection.
The first impression, there was a sign on the note that's familiar and very close to the sign that was been displayed before that we have received from the person calling himself the Zodiac. And by comparison now, we're pretty well assured that the individual who has shot 3 other people is responsible for this 4th shooting.
All 3 had occurred in an 8-block area of Brooklyn and neighboring Queens. The first on the 8th of March, the second 21 days later on the 29th of March, and the third 63 days later on the 31st of May. The police noted the regular cycle of 21 days or multiples thereof. As Chief Borelli now pointed out, all the victims shared certain characteristics.
Similarity. There is a similarity. First gentleman was walking with a cane. Second gentleman, we feel, might have had a few beers. The third individual was walking with a cane. And this gentleman was asleep on a park bench.
A week after the first 3 shootings, letters were sent to the New York Post and the CBS program 60 Minutes from a man who were found to be those of his first victims. More sinisterly, Zodiac announced that he intended to fill the circle with victims of the appropriate size. He also claimed to be the San Francisco Zodiac killer, returned to strike more victims as he had promised over 20 years before. Police doubted this, since the victims were sure that their attacker had been black rather than the white male who had been responsible in San Francisco. From their descriptions, the New York Police Department's artists unit was able to create this drawing, which was widely circulated. The artists unit has a good record of achieving likenesses which have led to many arrests, so hopes were high that there might be a breakthrough. The other major lead which detectives were following up was how the attacker knew the astrological signs of his victims. Chief Borelli emphasized that this was no coincidence.
We feel that on one occasion, the person responsible for these shootings approached the victim prior to the shooting and engaged that individual in conversation. And during that conversation, the date of birth was asked of the victim.
This got widespread publicity, and soon people were coming forward to report strange conversations.
The man was walking in a fairly good clip, stopped abruptly, and said, "Hey, when's your birthday?" Then he sounded fairly personable. There was no accent. And, I mean, it was just an odd question. I've never had it asked to me before.
Others, like talent agent Robert McGowan, were open about his encounter, which had taken place near Central Park.
After he asked me about the watch and kind of like stared at me, he said, "What sign are you?"
And you answered?
You know. Well, at first I didn't say anything. And, he said, "What sign are you?" And I said, "You know, I'm Libra."
The police now confirmed that a warning note had been sent to the 75th Precinct in November 1989, but this had been filed as the work of a crank. Within a few days of the 4th shooting, the search had become a murder hunt, when the 3rd victim, Joseph Proce, died in hospital on the 5th of July. Mayor David Dinkins offered a $10,000 reward. And the killer added to the publicity by writing again to the New York Post, threatening to keep on filling in his astrological chart and repeating his claim to links with the San Francisco Zodiac. Handwriting analysts offered their opinions.
He's a very lonely individual since he doesn't relate to people, and with his high libido, it's a total frustration which is built up to a boiling point. So it's just, you know, when your frustration reaches a certain point, something has to give.
While professional astrologers cast doubt on whether the Zodiac killer really had a deep knowledge of the subject.
I very much doubt that these were planned astrologically, that I'm going to do this at 1:20 in the morning. There are events that astrologers will do that for. I don't think he planned it out.
Publicity throughout the city. The Guardian Angels mounted special patrols in Central Park and other neighborhoods. Whether it was this activity which put the killer off can only be guessed at. But more than 5 years later, there had been no further Zodiac killings in New York.
Mysteries, Crimes, and Trials, Unsolved Cases will return in a moment.
People really like SUVs. They're big, they're roomy. They're perfect for the outdoors.
You know what would be a great promotion? Rent a Ford Explorer for the price of our Taurus if you climb Mount Everest.
The Explorer for the price of a Taurus.
That's a great deal. I would have to agree.
Yeah.
It's a good deal, good car.
Very nice.
No response.
What is she doing? Come on!
This moment made possible by a man who knows his diamonds. BlueNile.com.
I know how. I am able. I'm part of this crazy mix of people and machines. I know how. Let me show you all the pictures in my mind and the colors in my dreams. I am more. I am master. I can dance with the buttons and the levers and the wires. I'm the future. I know how. I know how. Canon.
Tomorrow on the History Channel, will smallpox strike again? History's Mysteries investigates the terrifying potential, then venture into the realm of UFOs, from prehistoric caves to the Renaissance, followed by an in-depth look at amazing evolution of the Internet on Modern Marvel. It all begins tomorrow at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific on the History Channel.
The intercontinental weapons used to attack America. From the History Channel, the official network of every millennium. This is Time Lab 2000. In 1945, the Japanese launched more than 9,000 balloons in a last-ditch attack against America. Each carries dozens of bombs. 1,000 balloons make it across the ocean and come down on the Pacific coast. One kills 6 picnickers in Oregon. Another shuts down a nuclear facility that is helping to build the atomic bomb. The damage is minimal, but the threat is real. The government censors all news of the attack to prevent panic. The news blackout convinces Japan that the balloons are ineffective, and they are tricked into abandoning a potentially terrifying weapon. For the History Channel, I'm Sam Waterston.
We now return to History's Crimes and Trials, Unsolved Cases.
20 years before. At Christmas 1968, in a parking spot near Lake Herman, teenager Betty Lou Jensen was sprawled dead near the car. Her boyfriend, David Faraday, had been shot in the head and died before regaining consciousness. Nothing had been stolen, and the police were baffled. 6 months later, and only 2 miles from where Jensen and Faraday had been killed, came another shooting. Mike Magot was still alive, but his girlfriend, Darlene Ferrin, was slumped dead in the car. When he recovered sufficiently, Magot described her killer as white, round-faced, with wavy brown hair. A month later, on the 1st of August, 3 local newspapers received letters. These gave details of the ammunition used and the position and wounds of the victims, which had never been released officially. Each letter also had a third sheet with a message in cipher, with each editor only receiving 1/3 of the message. The writer asked that the whole message should be printed on the front page of each newspaper. He warned that if this were not done, he would go on a murder spree, killing lone people in the night. The letters were signed with a symbol similar to a gun sight. The message was published as requested. It proved difficult to crack until a schoolteacher, Dale Hayden, had the idea of searching for symbols which might make up the word kill. This proved the key, and the rest of the message soon followed. It began, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all." And the writer went on to say that he had already killed 5 people in the San Francisco Bay Area. Shortly afterwards, another letter was received in which the writer referred to himself as Zodiac. This was the name seized on by the press. 2 months later, on the 27th of September 1969, another young couple was attacked in this picnic area beside Lake Berryessa. 20-year-old Brian Hartnell and his girlfriend were tied up and repeatedly stabbed. 22-year-old Cecilia Shepard died 2 days later, but Hartnell made a slow recovery. Although he had used a knife, not a gun this time, the killer left a message scrawled on the side of the couple's car. This made it clear that the Zodiac had struck again. Only 2 weeks later, on the 11th of October, a taxi driver was seen slumped in his cab, being searched by a stocky white man. When police arrived, they found that Paul Stein had been shot dead. Witnesses enabled the police to draw up this portrait, which was widely circulated. But any doubts about the killer's identity were dispelled the next day, when a letter from Zodiac arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. With it was a blood-stained piece of the driver's shirt and a bullet from the same pistol that had killed Jensen and Faraday. The kiddies as they come tumbling out. But mercifully, despite this... For Detective David Taskey, this taunting letter was only one of many leads which had needed to be followed up. For although senior officers believed that the San Francisco Zodiac killer must either have died or moved away, they knew that they could not afford to take any chances. Psychiatrists studying serial killers believed that it would be unlikely that he would have stopped voluntarily. Once serial killers get hooked on murder, their need for the thrill seems to get greater and more uncontrollable the more they kill. The San Francisco Zodiac killings remain an open case.
History's Crimes and Trials, Unsolved Cases will return in a moment.
Tonight on Perfect Crime, he was one of the country's most feared killers.
The amount of panic it caused was unbelievable. He was playing a chess game with the police.
The Zodiac Killer, the true story of a most bizarre murderer.
I don't know of another case where you had somebody that was killing in such a open fashion.
This is the Zodiac speaking. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience.
Also, North End, Boston, January 17, 1950.
This was the first over $1 million robbery ever to happen in the United States.
The Great Brinks Robbery, the largest heist of its day, over $2.5 million.
It was a perfect crime because they knew that they could not be identified.
A crime so perfectly executed, police never could have solved it without inside help.
The Brinks robbery is the Mount Everest of armed robberies to this day.
Hello, I'm Roger Mudd. Welcome to the History Channel. A lucrative robbery and a series of mysterious killings. Two very different crimes, yet both were similar because the criminals left police totally baffled. Our program looks at two seemingly perfect crimes. One of them eventually solved, the other still a mystery. First, the Great Brinks heist. Flawless and bewildered the police. Zodiac tempted them with clues, publicly taunted them with insults, and dared them to solve his crimes. He was the first to demand his thoughts be printed by the press, and the first to earn the title serial killer. Zodiac may be dead or in jail. He has never been identified. We continue with Perfect Crimes, the Zodiac Killer.
On July 5th, 1969, at 12:40 a.m., police received this anonymous phone call.
I want to report a double murder. You will find kids in a brown car. They were shot. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye.
It was quickly traced to a payphone located a block away from the Vallejo, California Sheriff's Office.
You could see the Sheriff's Department from the phone booth. And at that point, the killer hung up the phone, and by the time the call was traced, there was no sight of anybody at the phone booth.
When officers arrived on the reported scene, a popular lovers' lane hangout, they found 22-year-old Darlene Farron and 19-year-old Michael Mageau riddled with bullets.
Mike Mayhew was outside of the car, and he was on his back. Darlene was in the car, and she was slumped behind the steering wheel. And she was breathing very shallowly.
Darlene tried to say the name of her killer or something really important to her, and by the time the doctor arrived, I believe she was dead. But there was a theory that she was trying to speak the name of her killer.
Michael miraculously survived and was able to recount the horrid attack to investigators.
Darlene and Michael were parked in what would be a lover's lane. Heavy-set guy, crew cut, glasses, pulled up in the car, and he was on them right away.
Without saying a word, the suspect opened fire. First he shot Michael, then shot Darlene.
Unfortunately, Michael was not able to give police a solid description of the killer. Police were baffled. Other than some shell casings found at the crime scene, there were no clues or potential leads. Worst of all, police could not come up with a solid motive for the attack.
Vallejo was a city that had homicides, but most of them were, alcohol-induced bar fights, and they had a strong naval population there, and it was a pretty crazy town with a lot of crime. The victim, Mike Mayhew, said he didn't know who the person was that did the shooting, so the police figured, hey, this is another, random act of violence.
However, the killer's anonymous phone call to police indicated otherwise.
I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye.
6 months earlier, in December 1968, shortly after midnight, Vallejo police had been notified of a brutal crime on another isolated lover's lane, Lake Herman Road.
Two teenagers, one 15, one 16, just basically parking out in a desolate area, probably necking, and someone pulls up behind them and gets out of the car, walks up and shoots them both.
When police arrived at the scene, they found teenagers David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen gunned down only a few feet from their automobile.
It was their first date, and it was Betty Lou's first date ever. Somebody pulled up next to them and then got out of his car. Could have been a woman, I guess, for that matter. But at that point, nobody knew, and there was a shooting.
At the time, there were no witnesses, no apparent motives, and no suspects. With nothing else to go on, the police immediately came up with a conclusion.
They looked at it like, okay, you have two kids that were killed in a secluded setting. It must be a jealous boyfriend. You know, a boy and a girl are killed on a date. It must be a jealous boyfriend. And so that's how they investigated the crime.
But now, 6 months later, an anonymous caller was taking credit for the two very similar attacks.
So after those shootings, police really didn't know what they had on their hands until a few days later. Local newspapers received 3 different letters from someone claiming responsibility for the murder.
Dear editor, this is the murder of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July in Vallejo. To prove I killed them, I shall state some facts, which only I and the police know.
He told them information about the Christmas murder. He told them information about what Darlene was wearing.
The girl on the 4th of July in Vallejo was wearing patterned slacks. The boy was also shot in the knee.
He told them information about the make of the car and things like that only the killer could have known. And that's the thing that linked the 2 crimes together.
Police were now convinced the author of the letters was the killer.
Seriously mentally deranged. He appears to have no conscience at all.
But all 3 letters contain more than just facts about the murders.
Reason or even alleged justification for anything that he does.
He sent along 3 ciphers, and he sent 1 cipher to the Vallejo Times-Herald. He sent 1 cipher to the Examiner in San Francisco and to the San Francisco Chronicle. And the idea was that when you solve these, you put them together, you got the complete letter.
I want you to print this cipher on the front page of your paper, and this cipher is my identity. If you do not print this cipher, I will cruise around all weekend, killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend.
The letters and ciphers were signed with an odd symbol, a circle with an overlying cross. As the local papers rushed to print the cipher, the police turned it over to U.S. Naval Intelligence for decoding. A naval cryptanalyst got nowhere, so the cipher was sent to code breakers at the National Security Agency and the CIA. But again, no success breaking the mysterious code. Questions now plagued authorities. Was the code real or was it gibberish? Who was this murderer who appeared to kill randomly? What were his motives? Would he kill again? As it turned out, the killer's cat and mouse game had only begun.
Perfect Crimes will continue in a moment here on the History Channel.
Chevy Blazer. A little security in an insecure world. Blazer, like a rock.
There's only one way to fly on business, and that's first class, which is why TWA created First Up, a program that puts you in first class for a full coach fare. It's that simple. Fly coach, fly first. Before your next flight, call TWA and ask for First Up and see if there's a first-class seat waiting for you. Fly coach, fly first. First Up from TWA. One mission, yours.
Hanson, Hawkins, and Boggs, and the Black Dahlia as Perfect Crimes continues. Tomorrow at 9 Eastern, 10 Pacific on the History Channel. Tonight on the History Channel.
Don't feel guilty. Nobody had ever said that to women before.
The pill, cyber sex, and Viagra.
Increased joy.
Viagra words has everybody grinning.
All products of the 20th century sexual revolution. The history of sex. Tonight at 10 Eastern, 11 Pacific, only on the History Channel.
Introducing VHIX.com. VHIX knows if it's better for you to lease or buy.
VHIX knows how to sell your used car online. VHIX knows how many luxury sedans are for sale within 10 miles of your home. Fact is, if it's about cars, VHIX knows the answer. Except why engineers can figure out how to make your turn signal shut off when you turn, but not when you don't turn. That, no one knows. VHIX.com. Roadmap to the automotive world.
To find ads, everybody wants them, but few ever get them.
That's because most people don't know the real key to developing abs lies in two factors: variety in training routines and nutritional insights to reduce fat deposits so you can see results.
New from Fitness Made Simple comes six-pack abs with John Baysell, the complete abdominal sculpting video. It offers 3 different home workouts and fat-fighting nutritional tips. Call now to order six-pack abs or order online at our website, fitnessmadesimple.com.
The History Channel now returns to Perfect Crimes, the Zodiac Killer.
By the fall of 1969, an unidentified killer had murdered 3 young people in Vallejo, California, a small town in the San Francisco Bay Area. The killer began taunting police by sending letters to the press demanding they be printed. Included with his notes were 3 ciphers that appeared to be unbreakable.
Well, every single agency that was able to break cipher, from the CIA to the NSA to the College of Mines, as I recall, were unable to break these 3 ciphers. This 300-symbol cipher was finally broken by a Salinas High School teacher, Don Hardin, who spent the whole weekend, and he broke it. And he broke the entire thing except the last 18 symbols of the 312 symbols, which was apparently gibberish.
Although the killer's identity was not revealed in the cipher, the note was a chilling insight into the murderer's mind.
It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow me down or stop my collecting of slaves for afterlife.
The deciphered message was so monstrous, Vallejo police weren't convinced the letter was authentic.
Or he knows he has a problem.
They publicly requested more intimate details of the murder.
A person that is sick.
He wrote within a week of that request that the police made, and he gave himself the nickname Zodiac.
This is the Zodiac speaking. In answer to your...
Why he chose that name, who knows? He was already using a symbol, a cross-circle symbol, like a rifle sight. That's how he signed his letters, but now he had a name to go along with it. And, you know, I don't know why he chose that name. There are lots of theories. Some people think that the name is, proves that he was into astrology, but who knows? I mean, he could have just taken it from the headlines. I mean, back in the late 60s, everybody was astrology and peace and free love and all that stuff was pretty popular back then. So maybe it was he took that name so that people might think he was a crazy hippie or something, to throw the police off. I don't know.
In answer to your asking for more details about the good times I have had in Vallejo, I shall be very happy to supply even more material. On the 4th of July, the boy was originally sitting in the front seat when I began firing. He ended up in the back seat, thrashing out very violently with his legs. That's how I shot him in the knee.
It's a lot like Jack the Ripper. People suddenly came to realize we had something new, and now today we'd call it a serial killer. But in those days, this was something remarkable, and the amount of panic it caused was unbelievable. What this killer was doing, this was something that nobody had ever done. He was leaving us clues. He was playing a chess game with the police.
Police had little to go on. Other than Zodiac's letters and shell casings found at the crime scenes, no other substantial clues were found. No fingerprints and no apparent motives for the attacks.
By August, pretty much all the usual suspects had been ruled out. People that suspected their neighbor because he was weird, but they were checked out. Darlene Farron's homicide report is full of just tons of names of people that were called into the police just because of, some small detail, but they were all checked out. But nobody significant yet.
Detectives did have a composite sketch based on information supplied by Michael Majot, who, along with Darlene Farron, was attacked by the Zodiac killer. Unfortunately, law enforcement's next clue would be the Zodiac's next victims, just 2 months later.
The next in the series of murders happened at Lake Berryessa. The park ranger got to the scene and found the male crawling along the beach, and he had said that, you know, he and his girlfriend had been stabbed by somebody wearing a hood, and that she was hurt much worse. At that point, it just looked like a random act of violence.
It was a balmy late afternoon on September 27, 1969. It took police and paramedics almost an hour to reach the remote Lake Berryessa, a beautiful park in the winemaking area of Napa Valley. Investigators found 22-year-old Cecilia Shepard lying in a pool of blood, barely coherent, and 20-year-old Brian Hartnell bleeding profusely.
They found that Brian Hartnell was badly stabbed. He'd been able to drag himself along a long peninsula, trying to go for help.
Shortly thereafter, another phone call was placed to the Napa Police Department, and this was placed just a block or two away from the police department at a payphone. And once again, it was a male voice.
I want to report a murder. No, a double murder. They are 2 miles north of park headquarters. I'm the one who did it.
And then he just left the phone hanging. And by the time they got there and everyone was around, it was placed so close to the police department, but again, the guy got away scot-free.
Had they even looked out the window, they probably would have seen the killer. The prints on that telephone were so wet, they had to dry them with a hairdryer. And they got nothing. The man who got the prints felt badly, felt he had somehow botched it.
During the course of the investigation at Lake Berryessa, police went back to Brian's car, which was parked in a nearby parking lot, white Carmen Ghia, and they saw on the door, apparently the suspect had written the dates of the 2 previous murders in Vallejo, and then he wrote that date, September 27th, 6:30 p.m. by night.
Signed in felt pen on the door of the couple's car was a circle with an overlain cross, the Zodiac's symbol. Cecilia Shepard's parents were with her when she died at 3:45 p.m. the following day. Miraculously, Brian Hartnell survived.
Brian Hartnell claimed that they were approached by a big guy, and he was wearing a hood that hung down to his chest and had a cross circle, the same symbol that Zodiac used, and the same symbol that was found on their car door by the detectives after the stabbing. Brian didn't see the knife coming and got stabbed in the back. It was 6 times, and he pretended to be dead, and that's when Zodiac started attacking Cecilia, and he stabbed her 10 times.
Police investigators again were baffled. No motive could be found for the attack, and there were no witnesses other than the surviving victim, who only saw Zodiac in the medieval-style executioner's robe.
During the examination of the crime scene, police found some shoe prints. It turned out to be a size 10.5 wing walker boot. Wing walkers were something that was distributed to the military, Air Force, naval personnel at the time. There were obviously a lot of them sold, but it started to narrow the investigation down towards possibly a military person.
The military connection was made because of the proficiency to weapons, and some of the symbols and the cryptograms seemed to be military. And the way the letters were numbered, 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6. And there were, military jargon was used, and so it was thought that this guy could definitely have some military background.
In just a 10-month period, Zodiac had savagely injured 2 young men and brutally killed 4 young women. What began as a local news story in Northern California escalated into national headlines. The Zodiac's reign of fear and terror struck everyone who heard of the mysterious killer, who seemed to come out of nowhere and disappear without a trace.
It just blew me away that this guy could get away with such atrocities and do these, crazy things like writing letters to the police and sending physical evidence. And in the Bay Area, of all places, in the late 60s, and not be noticed. I mean, he should have stood out like a sore thumb with a crew cut and horn rimmed glasses, but nobody could identify him.
The killings continued, and so did the letters to the newspapers.
This is the Zodiac speaking. I am the murderer of the taxi driver over by Washington and Maple Street last night. To prove this, here is a blood-stained piece of his shirt.
Just the night before, on October 13th, 1969, San Francisco police had found 29-year-old cab driver Paul Stein fatally shot in the head.
Up until the Stein murder, the only victims that were known to police, they were young couples in isolated areas, and they were the victims of overkill, whether they were shot multiple times or stabbed multiple times. You had the element of overkill, and the woman always died. Even though a man was present, the female always died. So when Paul Stein was killed and Zodiac took credit, it was really strange because Stein was a male cab driver all by himself. It was an urban setting, and Stein was only shot once. So the theories of why Zodiac killed kind of went out the window at that point.
It's amazing how someone could get away with so many murders committed out in public, writing letters, taking credit for his crimes. I think it's a combination of pretty smart, did a lot of planning, and was very lucky.
Over the next couple of months, in November and December of '69, newspaper editors received several more letters from Zodiac. With each note came threats of more killings, but by now the newspapers had stopped publishing his letters. This angered the Zodiac.
I get awfully lonely when I'm ignored. So lonely I could do my thing.
Now he began keeping score between himself and the police in his letters.
He said, me 7, SFPD 0, which apparently was an indication of how many people he had claimed to have killed. In future letters, that number kept on going up, which was frustrating for police because we couldn't tie that many murders to the Zodiac.
Zodiac continued to write and brag about other people he claimed to kill. He stopped telling police where to find his victims' bodies, but his tally kept rising.
As time went on, the number of homicide victims Zodiac was claiming kept on going up and up. And frankly, police didn't really know if he was telling the truth or he was just boasting.
They couldn't find anybody that would fit, that could be Zodiac victims. But what I don't know if they considered was that maybe Zodiac was referring to past victims. He was including some victims that he might have killed before adopting the name Zodiac.
For reasons still unknown, Zodiac's letters slowly began to peter out by the mid-1970s. The last known trace of the killer came in the form of a letter sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. The Zodiac killer was never heard from again. In all, the police in various jurisdictions checked out approximately 2,500 suspects. To this day, many policemen have their own favorite suspect, but overwhelming circumstantial evidence really points to only one man, a man who once bragged to a family member that he was the Zodiac killer.
In our next hour, erotic encounters in the 20th century on The History of Sex.
What do you know? What don't you know? How do you propose to find out? The Power of J.P. Morgan. Wealth Management. Online.
3, 2, 1. We are officially open for business.
Facing a virtual reality? UPS can help you plan for it, manage it, and deal with it. We deliver more e-shipments than anyone. UPS, moving at the speed of business. This one's done.
Yeah, whatever.
The totally restyled all-wheel drive Subaru Forester. As easy on the eye as it is on the road.
Tomorrow on the History Channel. Why did 38 people refuse to stop the murder of Kitty Genovese? History's Mysteries investigates. Then Perfect Crimes probed Hollywood's notorious Black Dahlia case, followed by the history of sex from Don Juan to Queen Victoria. It all begins tomorrow at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific on the History Channel.
3 minutes from now, a heart attack victim will be rushed into this emergency.
For approximately 6 years, Zodiac terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area. Despite the 2,500 suspects questioned, law enforcement never gathered enough evidence to make a single arrest.
Virtually every officer and every reporter involved in this case, their lives were ruined. This is a terrible case. It's a very obsessive case. It does suck you in. I mean, there's everything from alcoholism to losing their jobs to marriages breaking up. You can't say they didn't try on this.
Although many policemen have their own favorite suspect, there is one that the majority of law enforcement officers agree was probably the Zodiac killer. He's Arthur Lee Allen, a career criminal and longtime resident of Vallejo.
Arthur Lee Allen was a janitor, a child molester. He showed up at his parole officers holding the hand of a little girl. This is a guy who's always on the edge, always daring. This is a man who lived with his mother. The reverse on Psycho. She was up above, he lived in the basement. I spent many months watching this guy. This was one strange guy. Very, very odd.
Over the years, circumstantial evidence against Allen began to add up. In 1971, some of Allen's friends called police as they heard him speaking of most dangerous game and man is true game, two phrases the Zodiac used in his letters.
Allen is the only Zodiac suspect that they were ever able to get enough evidence to get a search warrant, and they searched 3 times. First time was in 1972. They found a foot-long knife with a sheath, which is thought to have been used to bury Esther.
Allen's dad was the Navy commander. There was even a theory put to me by one policeman, he was wearing his father's clothes. It just is a very strong military feeling to this. Whoever Zodiac was somebody closely identified with the military.
They searched a trailer that he kept in Santa Rosa while he was a student at Sonoma State, and they found a pair of size 10.5 wing walkers.
Wing walkers, a military boot, the same style and size worn by the killer at Lake Berryessa.
Arthur Lee Allen, the only man they've ever served search warrants, a man who wore a wristwatch. It's a Zodiac with a cross circle on it, wore a Zodiac ring, who, I mean, it's just like he was just like selling people that he was Zodiac.
Most importantly, of all the suspects in the case, Allen was the only one who could be placed at the scene of all Zodiac murders. But in a court of law, such evidence is purely circumstantial. In 1974, Allen was convicted for child molestation and sent to Atascadero State Hospital.
I might point out that Arthur Lee Allen, during the time he was at Atascadero, we had a 4-year gap of letters. And when Arthur Lee Allen was released from the Atascadero prison, we got a letter from Zodiac for the first time in 4 years the next day. So, you know, you look at those little things, and you begin to add this up, you get a pretty good case.
There were also no known Zodiac killings when Allen was imprisoned. Regardless, Allen vehemently denied any accusations. A local San Francisco television reporter interviewed him in 1991. His denial was not all that convincing.
The notorious Zodiac killer.
They haven't arrested me because they can't prove a thing. I'm not the damn Zodiac. If I die, that'll cure it for me. Or if Zodiac himself confesses.
Until you can identify a suspect positively, the case is always going to remain open. There are a lot of people who think that Arthur Lee Allen is a suspect, but there are things that indicate he wasn't. The first time someone presented a suspect to me with, you know, a book full of circumstantial evidence, I was really impressed. But after I saw it over and over again, I was just amazed at how many people can fit that Zodiac profile. And now I'm pretty skeptical when somebody tells me I know who the Zodiac is.
Arthur Lee Allen died of natural causes in August of 1992. However insane he may have appeared, Allen could have been innocent. So if Alan was not the Zodiac, then what happened to the real murderer?
And you got to remember about Zodiac, he is the egotist of all. He's the greatest, self-absorbed guy you can imagine. They're doing a movie, they're books, you're doing shows like yours. Could he restrain himself from writing, from in any way communicating? If he were alive, you would be hearing from the Zodiac Killer. It's impossible that you wouldn't be. If he moved somewhere else, you don't change that. You still do the same MO. You still do the same kinds of crimes. You would know that he's alive. He was there. So I've always been convinced that we have nothing to fear from Zodiac, that he is dead.
Now, as time goes on, I think it's going to be more difficult to ever find out who the Zodiac Killer is. But you never know. Someone might open up a hope chest someday and find the hood, the knife, and a letter of confession. I hope so.
In 1996, San Francisco detectives briefly considered whether Unabomber Ted Kaczynski was also the Zodiac Killer. He had lived in the Bay Area at the time of the killings and wrote to newspapers about his crimes. Police concluded the similarities between the two were coincidental. Zodiac remains at large. Tomorrow, Perfect Crimes continues with 2 more crimes, one of them solved, the other still a puzzle.